First question on disarmament. I think this is an area where we haven't seen the kind of progress that we need to have, and I really hope finally that these negotiations, not least here in Geneva, can start seriously. There is so much that we need to do. There is discussions among major powers about a new generation of nuclear weapons. There is a discussion about increased military budgets, and there's discussion how much of that will go to this sector of nuclear weapons. So I think it's really critical to start really a serious move to start talks here. There are a couple of things that are important, and we don't know yet how they will develop. But of course, one of the major issues that we will have to watch the next 4 or 5 months is the direction of the US-Russian relationship. I think that I would hope that a component of that discussion will have to be the direction on disarmament. The other thing that I also think is important is what happens with the Iran P5+1 agreement. I believe that this is a very important agreement and that it is an international agreement. There might be questions about it, but I think that there are so many advantages of keeping the agreement, and there are so many risks of having that agreement fall apart. I think it could lead to, in the worst case scenario, lead to even quicker development of nuclear arms than we have seen some tendencies of already today. The most urgent problem outside the world today is, of course, what happens in DPRK and that direction. But I think we need to make sure that this agreement, which in my view is an example of that we still have good results from patient and skillful diplomacy under very difficult conditions, that agreement is really worth retaining. And it has also serious implications for the non-proliferation issues if it were to be put in question or even loses its relevance. On the issue of IOM and the role in the inside United Nations, you're right that one of the most difficult issues when we defined the relationship between IOM and the other UN bodies was to reflect this division of labor which is necessary. There is no doubt, we don't in no way doubt a leading role for IOM on migration, and I'm full of admiration for its work, and I've seen it in the field, and that's why I wanted to push for this. And let me also tell you that two of the people who pushed it hardest inside the UN was Antonio Guterres when he was head of UNHCR. That's interesting to note in the present situation. And the other one was Peter Sutherland, who was our special representative of migration. And Bill and I were the ones who were in the middle of it and trying to take this forward. But I must admit to you that there are still questions raised by others who feel that they have a role in the broader sense of dealing with migration, and we need to have their voices heard, even in the preparations now for the conference in 2018. And you mentioned the UNODC in Vienna. I can mention to you also that the human rights colleagues here in Geneva have legitimate views about their role, migrant workers, for instance. You have also DESA, Department of Economic and Social Affairs, that has a role also as serving member states in economic and social negotiations. What was said in the New York Declaration was that the preparatory work should be a combination of the Secretariat resources and IOM, and discussions are going on about how that work shall be organized. We will also be guided very much by the member states. The negotiations, the President of the General Assembly has just named 2 facilitators. One is Switzerland and the other one Mexico. So they have a special role also because they have now been asked to work out the modalities for the 2018 conference. But I think one of the things that is waiting for me when I get back to New York is to talk to Bill and some of these other actors. But I was proud to be chairing this whole period of the negotiations for the planning for the 19th of September meeting. I had a steering group, which I chaired, with all actors. That steering group met every second week or so, and it was a very important tool. And I don't know whether Antonio Guterres will ask my successor to continue that steering group, because that was, at least during this phase when we prepared for the 19th September meeting, very good. And we could have a way to let all voices be heard. But we will see how it works out. I hope we will find good solutions, primarily for effectively dealing with the migrant problem issues. Thank you very much. I'm glad you mentioned David, who was here. He was with me 1992, was it? 93, when I came there. I went to Chernobyl, and it was one of the most moving experiences of my life to see Chernobyl. I was 200 meters away from the sarcophage. Don't get close to me. At that time, it was a pretty preliminary setup. I met the victims. I flew over the area. I saw the brown forest. This was 6 years after it happened. It was just, you could see the streak of the rains, as you probably still can see. Wow. Dead forest leading up, the winds leading up to from Ukraine to Belarus. And then I had the most moving part of my trip, where I couldn't hold my tears back, was to go to the hospital where the children with thyroid cancer was. That was unbearable practical weather. I still see the images in front of me. And I remember in the evening we were sitting in the guest house and absorbing this. We still, both of us, never forget those moments. And I went to Russia, and I realized that this was a big problem, how nuclear energy was being organized. And it was a tremendously important moment. It was part of my job as emergency relief coordinator to do this. In a strange way, it was really reinforcing my humanitarian commitment and to try to put people in the center. Thank you for the thanks for IOM. Please pass it on. Were you in the meeting when I came here afterwards? Were you there? It was a great occasion. Thank you so much. And it was great to have the cooperation from the member states of IOM and the member states of UN. Now, I think the membership is 168, 67, how many? You're not quite universal yet.
65, but about to go up.
60, here, some countries considering it. China joining is, of course, extremely important. So you are on the way to full universality. Pedro is a dear friend since 1988. Not only did we meet then, you were ambassador in Sweden, you were ambassador in New York, you're ambassador here. We met 2 weeks ago in New York. You are a very, very prominent lawyer. You are still chair of the International Law Commission. Yeah, anyway, great to see you. And on this, I think it's a very good question, because what I see it is on a timeline. You have peacemaking here early on. Article 33 of the UN Charter, mediation, arbitration, blah, blah. Then you have peacekeeping here. If you don't really make it, you have to set up a peacekeeping operation. And then you have peace building here, when you build peace to make sure it doesn't happen again, so that it doesn't relapse. That's how I always saw it. Now, there is something extremely interesting that has happened. We set up a review on peace operations secretariat, and then the member states wanted to have a review of peace building after the Peace Building Commission was established 10 years ago, and didn't quite become what we wanted, I must admit. So Gert Rosenthal, the ambassador of Guatemala, I think he is, did a great job, and with his panel. And now, one of our best officers in the UN, maybe I shouldn't ask, he will ask for a salary raise when I say this, but it is Oscar Fernandez Terranco. He's now head of the Peace Building Support Office, and is doing a tremendous job. He's from Argentina. And he's doing a tremendous job together with the member states and us to develop a new concept, which is called sustaining peace. Sustaining peace. In a way, we are aiming for having an equivalent of sustaining development. sustainable development to sustainable peace. And this concept is combining the prevention and the work during a conflict and the work afterwards. That the peace work has to be sustainable and go through. In fact, doing peace building is also prevention. Because if you do set up institutions, if you do reconciliation as you try to do, I hope you succeed, Pedro, also still, you have problems with Renamo now, but you know, that's what you did. That's what Kagame did in Rwanda. But if you fail in reconciliation, and you divide people and they fight each other, then you have the conflict again. In other words, peace building is prevention. So this is an almost, not revolutionary, but it's a hugely important conceptual breakthrough. And the beauty of it is that the member states have adopted it unanimously in the same text, the same wording in the General Assembly as in the Security Council. When I negotiated Peace Building Commission back in 2005, I was President of the General Assembly, the P5, at least 3 of the P5, two of them particularly, disliked it thoroughly. They thought peace building was an attempt from the non-members of the Security Council to get in there and have a role on peace and security. So it was, to say the least, limited enthusiasm about our idea, but they couldn't refuse it. Unfortunately, the model wasn't as good as it should have been back in 2005, but now it has taken the shape that at least I wanted 11 years ago. So look into this, because sustaining peace has the same beauty as the SDGs. They are namely reaching into both peace and security, development, institution building, and human rights. The whole concept is that in order to have sustainable peace, you need to work on all 3 at the same time. So the SDGs and the sustaining peace resolutions are 2 new tools in the hand of UN member states. And it could be very important. This shows the importance of doing conceptual work.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
One more round?
No, we have several.
Oh. Why one more round? I see.
There's only 2 more rounds.
I'm testing my
Give the floor to the Ambassador of Luxembourg.
testing my simultaneous capacity, which my wife claims I don't have.
Multitasking.
Thank you, the Secretary General. Jan, there is of course a temptation to make a long intervention, because not only because we like doing long interventions, but especially because in your long and distinguished career there are so many aspects which are important in general and also specifically for. But I will be very short. Just in the French tradition, the highest praise that can be heaped on somebody is a very short and sober formulation. Is "Il a bien mérité de la patrie." I think in this case, one can safely say "Il a bien mérité de la communauté internationale." So, thank you very much for all that you have been doing over the years and the decades, I should say. A short word, if I may, on Agenda 2030, because I agree, of course, very strongly with you that there is a tremendous potential of transformative impact in what has been agreed last year in September, but it needs to be, of course, translated into actual reality. It is good to see that there is a lot of Geneva DNA in the Agenda 2030, and I think notably our Director General, Michael Muller, is working a lot around this local input, if I may say so, into the overall, and there is a lot of knowledge and know-how here in Geneva which can be put to good use. But the big question is, of course, it is not sufficient to put the right words on paper, so that is important, has taken a lot of negotiations to get there, but are we going to change the minds, the hearts and minds on it? Will we shift from old thinking to new thinking, and will it translate into new operational reality? So my question would be, are you confident that it will neither be just staying at the level of the words, or, if I may say so, just be integrated in the normal standard UNEs, if I may say so, and the standard UN procedures, which would be, I think, as detrimental. And a second comment on the rights up front. And I think more generally the prevention of mass atrocities. And of course you underline the link with preventive diplomacy. I think that is of course very proper, but also probably the most difficult part of it all. And my question would be, are you confident that the that the UN system as a system is gearing up to, first of all, better exchange of information, aggregation, analysis, and action based on that. So just as a word of conclusion, your legacy, I think, will be clearly to safeguard multilateralism in the conditions of the 21st century. I think a lot of adaptation is needed, and you have provided a lot of input on that. Also, the specific challenge to the UN to deliver as one, to deliver as a system, which I think we are not there yet. A lot needs still to be done. And just to conclude, I think based on your Chernobyl experience, you still irradiate a lot of very positive vibrations, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Ambassador. I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for bringing us together, and thank you very much, Mr. General, for making the time to come here and talk to us, because partying words are important. They remind us of our role and responsibilities. It allows us to see the forest from the trees, something that we easily forget here in the midst of it all. So I thank you very much for that. And you won't be surprised that as a Canadian, your comments on diversity as a strength are music to our ears, and it's very important from a Canadian perspective. So just my question for you would be today, you've painted a portrait, I would say, and rather great picture of peacekeeping. You were just talking about sustainable peace as a new tool in the toolkit, and you have also made comments about human rights up front. But at the end of the day, pragmatically speaking, how do you think we should best integrate the third pillar, the human rights pillar, in peacekeeping operation, which continues to be a really big challenge? So I would be interested in hearing your views and words of wisdom on this. And again, thank you very much for your.
Thank you. I give the floor to the permanent representative of the United States.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Deputy Secretary General, for joining us today for this very informative and valuable session. I just have a quick question as it relates to the work that's been done to promote gender equality and to protect and empower women and girls over your tenure. I was curious how you would characterize that body of work as a whole, whether you would put that in the success category or the failure category. I can see aspects of it falling under both. I'm sure you're aware we do a lot of work here in that area, and Michael's been a great partner and leader in trying to help promote gender equality with some real tangible on the ground progress. And I'm just curious how you think about not only a look back and where we've come and where we've sort of slipped up a little bit, but also looking forward under the new incoming Secretary General, who's obviously not a woman, but a self-proclaimed feminist and very committed to these issues, and just give us some advice on how you can see our work having a greater positive impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I give the floor to Italy.
Thank you, Director General. And also, I would like to thank the Deputy Secretary General for his presentation and for sharing with us his experience. Indeed, we very much support and welcome this kind of initiatives, because we believe it's very important to strengthen the relation and dialogue between Geneva and New York. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development recognizes that all our challenges and our opportunities are interdependent and mutually reinforcing. So we very much agree on the fact that we need a comprehensive response for all these challenges that we face today. And you underline how it is important that the UN operates in a more cohesive, cross-cutting and horizontal manner. In your presentation, you also were mentioning the importance of prevention, and indeed the central message from the three major reviews, which is peace operation, peace building, and women, peace and security, really put the focus on the importance of prevention, and as you mentioned, on the sustainable peace. So I have two questions. The first one is concerning the human rights pillars, and as my colleague said, which is the challenge that you see in consolidating human rights function within the UN peace missions? And the second, according to you, does follow-up action to recommendation from the human rights mechanism, including in particular UPR, inform the development work of the UN system at country level, and especially in connection of the SDGs?
Thank you very much. Last one before giving back the floor to the DSG, to the European Union.
Thank you very much, Director General, and great thanks to the Deputy Secretary General for taking the time to brief us and for also going to Brussels yesterday for the conference on the Central African Republic. It's a good example, and it's a good fitting perhaps this is the last visit, last trip. But it was also to Brussels because we are very grateful for the way in which the cooperation with the European Union has really flourished during your time as Deputy Secretary General, also before. And I think the conference on the Central African Republic is a good emblem of this, and how you work together with peacekeeping in human rights, in development assistance, and on so many areas, in so many other countries also, on so many issues. So thank you very much for that. And also, more generally, to thank you for being an inspiration. I've had the pleasure of serving in New York during your time there, and for reminding us of the UN, where it comes from, what it stands for, what it can be, and what it should be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. DSG.
Well, you're right, Jean-Marc. SDGs are there, but they have to turn into reality. And I think it's on two levels where we have to really make sure that it becomes a reality. One is that when it goes back to governments, to your governments, it is important to make the case that the SDGs is a different kind of, I would say animal, different kind of construction than the MDGs. They go much wider. They affect all, not all, but very many more of the government departments than the MDGs. I had an interesting experience. I don't say this in order to ingratiate myself with the Secretary General, but I was in Korea and I saw exactly what I wanted to see. The person who knew most about the SDGs in the Korean government was the Minister of Finance. He was chairing a committee on SDGs. And he was not only Minister of Finance, he was Minister of Strategic Planning. So he had to look at the issues from the perspective of as he said, the SDGs, sustainability. He had to say this is not only a budget cutting exercise, this is an investment that affects the energy sector in a renewable direction. The transport system has to be done in such a way that it is in conformity with the goals. I don't say by this that you should suggest to the government that the Minister of Finance should minister strategic planning, but if you do so, I don't mind.
It's always a good idea, yes.
Since I've been fighting as foreign minister with the finance minister on budget cutting, I think I've made the case what the long-term effects will be if it doesn't. So, and then also I met speakers of parliaments when they were in New York, and I reminded the speakers of parliaments that it's not only the Committee of Foreign Affairs or Committee of Development that are related to the SDGs. It's the Committee of Transportation, housing, energy, agriculture that are also affected. And they said, oh, some of them had realized it, some hadn't. So I think if we accept that these goals are universal, we have to also make sure that that is taken seriously by those who can influence it. But not only in governments, we also have to reach out. And I'm hopeful, Jean-Marc, I'm hopeful on two counts. I have seen now so much interest in the private sector in going the direction of sustainability. I think the private sector starts to realize that green economy is a pretty good idea. Creating jobs and the future conditions better, and they can better explain to their children at the dinner table what they are doing in the private sector, and they can recruit the best people from the universities because they have high ethical standards. They want to do the right thing on environment, on human rights, on labor legislation. I don't say everybody has realized this, but I think the general trend, we are going far away from the charity approach from the private sector I'm starting to see that they go away even from the corporate social responsibility, their small office of CSR, to saying that these issues of sustainability are strategic objectives for us. And I can tell you, I'm invited to go to so many business meetings and, not only Davos and so forth, but all over the place. Please let us know how these SDGs work. Oh, so it is reaching into the private sector. And Michael, you worked on that very much. I think it's a clear trend. I think you've noticed the same. The second thing is young people. This is fantastic. I'm really glad. I was in Stockholm giving a speech at the World Water Week. Veronica, you know what that means. And it was a big thing. And then comes up a guy, about 25 years old, a bit sort of casual, saying, you know what, there's a meeting in the Blue Harry Radisson in Stockholm with 300, and he's used the word IT nerds. IT nerds. And, they are the ones doing these computer games. And unfortunately, many of them are war games. People, And this guy said, my idea that I've sold to the board of this meeting is that I will ask you to speak about SDGs in a 4-minute film that I'm ready to do now. And then you will challenge these nerds to put this into a game. So I said, fine, what date do we want to do it? He said, now. The camera is in the other room. So I walked right into that room. He didn't even have the question. He just started the filming. Tell me about the SDGs. So I did. And evidently it worked. And then he told me later it was sent on to 6,000 other IT nerds in the world. When I get back to New York, I'm going to find out what actually came out of this. But these kids were saying, why should we do these war games only? And they got some new ideas and they ran with it. This is just an example of us having to reach out, find new methods, use social media. And it actually comes back to my point about us being internationalists. We have to be able to to produce our narrative. And we need to work in a completely new way, because the other side, those who want to rather look inward and identify outside world as a problem, they are onto this, and very skillfully in a negative way. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. On the from the peacekeeping of integrated human rights, I think we have succeeded. If you look at the development of human rights mandates in the Security Council, if you look over a 10-year period, it's a much stronger emphasis on protection of civilians. That's undoubtedly right. The problem is to really be able to do that as well as we want to. And where we don't, we have reputational problems. But I think the biggest problem, where you probably have to work with your governments also, is to bring in the element of accountability. And every time we try to remind of this, and then leading to an ICC dimension, whatever, we have huge problems to get resolutions out. So yes, awareness of protection of civilians, accountability is still open, and we need to really make progress on that. So I could give long answers, but I think for the interest of time, that's all I can say on this now. On gender equality, I think, everybody talked about having the first woman, Secretary General, the first woman leading a leading nation, close to your heart. And instead we have 2 men. So on the surface we have a setback, but I would feel in my bones that these next 2 decades will probably historically turn out to be the period of the full empowerment of women. I think it's historically a wave, it's strong, it's coming. Going all around the world, I see this as a wave. One problem why you can't see it as good news or bad news is that those who don't like this trend are also activating themselves and mobilizing. But that is a sign that, to me, it's getting serious. I think this is actually one of the biggest hope factors in the world. women's full empowerment in all respects, not only from a basic value perspective and everybody's equal worth, but also from an economic and social perspective. It's just a tremendous liberating and growth factor in both human growth and economic and social growth. So I hope to God it happens, and also hope it has full support of the men. I worked once for a very inspiring Prime Minister, Olof Palme, and we tried a speech on him, and the speechwriter had written a rather boring title, The Importance of the Emancipation of Women. And Olof Palme said, what a boring title. Don't you? And by the way, you haven't understood the whole subject. You don't understand. Change it immediately if you want to have this title, The Importance of the Emancipation of Man. He said that a long time ago, you know, that this is the business of the men also. So I think it's coming. And you see it in numbers of women, although it's still far too low. When I was ambassador in New York many years ago, 25 years ago, I think there were 10 women ambassadors. Now there are 37. In my government, I was foreign minister. No government since 1990 has gone away from the rule 50-50. All the Nordic countries practically have 50-50 in the government. I don't know how Canada is doing. Yeah. So I think, no, I say it's good news. It's good. And by the way, it has to be good news. By the way, I also want to say there is another thing that is happening. Really good news is Resolution 2250. Resolution 2250. It will be as important as Resolution 1325. 1325 has been far too slow in implementation, far too slow. 2250 is about use. The conceptual breakthrough that I would like to see is that we should, of course, continue to work for young people. But the big conceptual breakthrough is to work with young people. In today's world, where things are happening so rapidly, we have to work with young people. I'll give you the most simple example. I hope to God I have. Oh yeah, it is. This one. When I'm home in Sweden and see my grandchild, Agnes, she picks it up from my pocket. Every time, in less than 15 seconds, she teaches me something about this that I didn't know. It's true. There you see her. She did that in 5 seconds, you know. Didn't you know? I just say that's symbolic, you know. If you talk about young people, about education, jobs, there is so much we can't wait for 15 years to start when they are 25, 30. We should start talking to them as now. They should feel a sense of participation. If the UN can be good at reaching young people, then we are doing a great thing. Okay, I'm for Italy. Thank you very much. Yes, I think the thing that I partly answered your question on the human rights amendment, but what's very important is that I have invited the mandate holders, the special rapporteurs, to always, when they come to New York, see me. I think I saw, Rebecca, are you here? Yes. I think I saw 4, 5, 6 of them when they were there now, reporting to the third committee. And I said to them, plus the signal that I've sent to Zain al-Hussein and others, the Universal Periodic Review, we want to be, this is important for human rights up front. And they have reacted so positively because I've received so much information that are valuable for our prevention work. And they have felt that finally, now even more, they have a New York connection to the Security Council via us with that information. It's extremely valuable. So please pass on to the rapporteurs, some of you, that they are, I hope my successor will continue to work in the same vein. And to the European Union, I think the CAR meeting was extremely important because it was organized by European Union together with the government of CAR, but the 3 organizations that wrote the pledging document, which is one of the best I've read, and I represent the UN at that meeting, and I was in CAR 2 weeks ago. That document was produced by European Union, UN, and World Bank. The World Bank contribution was very solid, and we got over $2.2 billion. And this may be the saving operation for CAR, so it doesn't fall down on the wrong side of the fence. But I also say that cooperation is strategic that we have. We have a similarly growing cooperation with the African Union. It's going really, I think this is finally we realize what Chapter 7 means. Chapter 7, sorry, Chapter 8, of course. Chapter 7 we've had enough of, not enough of. Chapter 8 is neglected, apart from Chapter 6. Regional arrangements, part of the UN Charter. Finally, we realize it sinks in. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. Colleagues, we have a little, maybe 10 minutes left, and I have 6 speakers on my list. I would like you to be telegraphic in your delivery, if you don't mind, so we can give some time for the DG to answer them. Having said that, let me give the floor to Azerbaijan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mulder. I'd like to greet warmly the Deputy Secretary General and thank him personally for his involvement into the